G'day, boys and girls. So, I just finished season 3 of The Mandalorian, and mentally, I feel like. Now, was this season exciting? I think it'd be pretty easy to argue yes. My lizard brain very much appreciated the big boom boos and the guns smacking each other with laser sticks. The visuals and costume design were also nice, and some of the action scenes were well choreographed. But no matter how great these elements were, I could not find enough energy to care. And it got me thinking, why is that? Why is it that a series that I loved for the first 2 seasons, I no longer care about? Well, the answer that I landed on was conflict, or Mandalorian's case, the lack thereof. Now, to structure this video, I'm going to attack this topic of conflict in 3 parts. In the first, I'll explain what I mean by lack of conflict, and in the second, I'll attempt to make small changes to the plot that would create some sort of overarching story. In the third, because I like making things difficult for myself, I will rewrite the entire story from the ground up. Why? Because I have no uni assignments due for a week and I have way too much time to think right now. Also, this is my first YouTube video, so if you find me entertaining, please do like and subscribe, and if you don't, still like and subscribe, or Kathleen Kennedy will come to your house tonight and tell you her plans for the next Rey Skywalker trilogy starring Sam Smith.
I'd be any type of fish of them.
Anyway, the first topic is why there was no conflict. So, to do this, I wanted to look through the first 2 episodes of Mando Season 1 and compare them to Season 3. The reason I'm not doing Season 2 is because Season 2 is a direct continuation of the storyline of Season 1, so it's a slightly different circumstance where the villains and main plot threads from the first season were never quite resolved. So in Season 2, the obligatory Mandalorian looking cool scene is our opening. The story starts with our main character, Mr. Mandalorian, taking on a contract for this bloke here, which we all know turns out to be the incredibly marketable little green dude. Gee, I sure hope Disney won't milk this character for the next 4 years, sacrificing story and any sense of logic to keep him on screen. This is called foreshadowing.
No, I like money.
Anyway, the episode completes with the Mandalorian completing his task and transfers the child to his employer. He gets his money, then changes his mind and decides to keep the money and save the little dude, and they go off on their merry way, ready to adventure around the galaxy together. Now, this opener works in 2 ways. First, it introduces our main characters. It shows us what they are doing at this time in their lives, and without showing us a bad guy directly, it gives us an understanding that there is something bigger going on. So remember this last point, because this is the important one. Now, when we look at Season 3, we have none of these things. It opens up on some bizarre planet where the Mandalorians have decided to make their home base, even though there are evil crocodile monsters and weird birds that keep trying to eat them. The opening scene does not establish characters in any new ways like Season 1 does, and just reiterates what we already know from the Book of Boba Fett, which is that Mando needs to go to Mandalore to have a swim. And I know many of you are thinking, but what about the people who didn't see the Book of Boba Fett? Well, to that I say they should do their homework. But in all seriousness, the fact that Mando and Grogu were reunited in the Book of Boba Fett is a crime, and it makes me as disgusted as the paparazzi that follow Sam Smith around. Lots of Sam Smith hate today, I'm sorry. But Locke, you incredibly smart and brave content creator, surely the rest of the episode had some clear goals. And well, no, it didn't. I thought something was going to happen too, but the rest of the episode is just Mando going places. He goes to Apollo Creed's planet, and then he fights Davy Jones in space, and then he goes to Bo-Katan, who just tells him to go to the mines of Mandalore, and then the episode ends. As you can see, nothing happens, but much like you, I was hoping beyond hope that this was some great setup for the next episode. But it wasn't. The next episode just has Mando going to Mandalore, getting captured like an idiot, losing the Darksaber, and then falling into a well. Now, comparing these 2 summaries, you're probably starting to notice something. In Season 3, every moment of conflict is random. The crocodile happens to appear when Mando arrives. The pirates happen to arrive when Mando is with Apollo Creed. And this creepy Walmart General Grievous happens to be prowling in the particular area when Mando walks through. Compare this to Season 1, where each piece of conflict makes sense. Mando fights the bounty hunters specifically to get Grogu. They're not there by chance, they're there holding Grogu. The same can be said for the fight with the stormtroopers. He has to fight them when he changes his mind. It's not like these troopers just appear at random and try to capture Grogu. Instead, they were working for the guy that sent Mando after Grogu in the first place. In Season 3, Mando's objective is the mine. Every other piece of conflict is just a coincidence that they're in his way. In Season 1, Mando's objective is to get Baby Yoda, and each piece of conflict is there deliberately because it's based around Baby Yoda. These factors can be seen more directly when you look at the overall seasons. Yes, Mando Season 1 had a lot of filler episodes, but the whole time there was this ominous threat hanging over our head. There was simply, bad guys want Grogu for some nefarious purpose. Season 3 lacked that. The entire season was just Mando going around and doing things. And it was only in the second last episode where we find out, oh, actually, Moff Gideon was behind the pirate attack, and he's escaped, and he's clothing himself, and blah, 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 blah. Thrawn's back. The problem with this is that it makes the season feel meaningless. It makes it feel like there is no through line, and the Mandalorian's entire adventure is just him completing side quests until the plot catches up and remembers, oh, I'm supposed to be telling a story. So, how could they have fixed this? And this is kind of what works into my second point. It's the quick fix. How could the editors have made this story a more cohesive one? And my solution is very simple. Take the opening 2 scenes of the second last episode, the one with Moff Gideon and the Ronaldo lookalike.
Muchas gracias, afición. Este para vosotros.
And the one with the council, and place them earlier in episodes. Yes, you would have to tweak the dialogue slightly so that it makes sense, but this would give audiences the impression that throughout the whole season there was something brewing in the background, and it would thus keep us way more invested. So I feel like I've complained enough and pointed out the problems, and this is where I try to fix them. Now, I was deliberating when doing this. Do I try and keep a similar thread to Season 3, or do I boil it down to the key ideas and do a rewrite from there? I ended up picking the second option because this is my YouTube channel and
Look at me, sure. Look at me, sure. I'm the captain now.
So the key ideas I outlined were as follows. The first is that Mando has to redeem himself for taking off his helmet in Season 2. Which makes a lot of sense because that was kind of a pushing narrative thread for the last 2 seasons. The second is that Mandalore needs to be reclaimed. Pretty self-explanatory one. The third is that Bo-Katan needs to undergo significant character growth. And now this is a more interesting one because we've seen in the past that Bo-Katan has made many mistakes that has led to Mandalore ending up the way it is. Her first mistake was allying with the Death Watch. Her second was losing it to Maul. Her third was when she reclaimed the Darksaber without truly deserving it. And both times she lost it to the Empire. So this is a very, very important one. And the fourth, of course, is Moff Gideon must die. So, after breaking down these elements, I'm going to try and rewrite the story based on this. I'll even reenact a few scenes for you to make the viewing easier. So, Season 3 will open in a fairly similar way. The Mandalorian will go to Mandalore to redeem himself. He will stop by Bo-Katan on the way and ask for help. But in this version, she will be way more toxic to him, saying things like, "You're not worthy of the Darksaber," and "I bet you really smell under that helmet." This will kind of piss Mando off, and it will look like both characters are about to fight, but then Mando will storm off out of the building before it comes to that, realizing that the fight's not worth it. As normal, Mando will go to Mandalore and do the normal bullshittery of fighting funny-looking aliens and shooting stuff, but eventually he'll get to the waters and redeem himself no problem. He'll then get out of the mines and go back to the ship and fly to his homies in Space Florida and tell them that Mandalore is safe. But this is where the problem occurs. Bo-Katan finds out Mandalore is safe and well and sends scouting parties down to the planet's surface. Oh, and I should mention, in my version, Bo-Katan never lost the support of her homies. They've always backed her, basically. Anyway, she makes a plan to move back down to the surface and reclaim the planet. This general plot will cover the first 2 episodes, interlinked by a bit of random space fights and cool stuff, but Episode 3 is where we'll pick up with the armorer talking to Mando. She will tell him that the person who wields the Darksaber rules Mandalore. Mando says, but I don't want to lead, blah, blah, blah. And the armorer says something along the lines of, great leaders don't choose their moment to take the mantle. They are chosen by their people. Or something similar to that. In the end, Mando unwillingly agrees to take on the mantle of leadership and lead his clan back to Mandalore. Now, in this storyline, there are hundreds of different clans of Mandalorians around the galaxy, touching on a bit what we saw in Rebels. And in the next few episodes, we see both Mando and Bo-Katan recruiting these clans to their different causes. Of course, they run into each other a few times and realize that they both have plans to go to the Mandalorian service and become leaders. They have a few heated conversations throughout these episodes, but it doesn't quite boil over until one day, some members of Bo-Katan's group attack members of the Watch, who are Mando's group, when both groups cross each other searching for potential allies. The members of the Watch are killed, and the Armorer and Paz Vizsla are furious, telling Mando that they need to go to Mandalore now. Mando agrees, and he and his allies go to Mandalore first to claim it as their own. Bo-Katan also hears of this, and while she doesn't order her troops to attack the Watch, she realizes she must respond. So her armies go to Mandalore to claim it as well. Now, in this next phase, you have both armies on Mandalore, facing off with one another, ready to attack at a moment's notice. This is where you have one of these leader meeting scenes, like the one seen in Game of Thrones, where the leaders both leave their respective armies and talk to each other ahead of the main battle. Bo-Katan, as well as her top generals, face off against Mando, the Armorer, and Paz Vizsla. Mando and Bo have a sick exchange along the lines of, surrender yourself and the Darksaber to me. No, I am the rightful ruler of Mandalore, and you and your armies have no business going up against me, blah, 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 blah. Then, this is the fun part. Grogu, who has been with Mando, looks towards the horizon and makes a noise. Mando notices and goes, are you alright, kid? Grogu squeaks again, this time louder, faintly, just over the whistling winds, the sound of a hum, something that should not be there. Jetpacks, the armorer breathes. Paz Vizsla raises his lightsaber and points at Bo-Katan. You promised you'd come alone. What treachery is this? But Bo-Katan doesn't look at him, drawing blasters from her holsters. They're not ours. Then baba-ding-ba-boom, jetpack stormtroopers, oh yeah, baby. You didn't think I forgot about them? Hell yeah, they're so cool and epic and I love them. And the costume design did such a good job. And I just want to watch them do cool backflips and shit all day long. Oh my god, they're so fucking cool. Oh my god. Anyway, both armies are attacked by Moff Gideon's jetpack troopers. You have the, oh, where did they come from? That's already in the season. And I don't know and whatever. Now, I want this to happen roughly in the 5th episode. So the next 4 episodes are longer versions of what we saw in the finale. But in this case, rather than a battle between a few hundred people, it's a proper war. I'm talking fighters and spaceships and even a couple of those mini Star Destroyer things. I'm talking all the Mandalorians in the world, thousands and thousands of Mandalorians and 10,000 stormtroopers. I'm talking characters dying like Paz Vizsla in super heroic ways. I'm talking proper underground warfare like from the Geonosis arc in the Clone Wars. And you know, a bunch of really, really cool explosions and fights and stuff. This is where we just let the VFX department go absolutely nuts. Here, though, at some point, Mando and Bo-Katan will be separated from the group, probably by a cave-in or something, and will be forced for a whole episode to work together to survive, evading stormtroopers, finding water, etc. It will be very similar to when Barriss, Offee, and Ahsoka get trapped in the cave-in on Geonosis in the Clone Wars. So this episode will culminate with them eventually realizing that they share more similarities than differences. And when they inevitably find Moff Gideon, they will work together. Now, this is the scene I wanted to talk in detail about, is Moff Gideon's death. So all season long, Gideon has been prowling, appearing in a few scenes each episode, doing little menacing things in the background, but we don't know what is quite going on. Here, though, is when we will see his plan. It's much the same as it is in Season 3 normally. He's cloning himself and whatever, but it's done in a better way, where Mando and Bo-Katan both actually have to fight some of these clones, and Grogu comes in clutching up again with his little force powers and whatever. So you have a similar thing as in season 3, where Bo, Mando, and Gideon are all standing on a landing platform, duking it out, while a ship comes crashing down on top of them. Gideon gains the upper hand on Mando, sending him spinning across the platform, and Mando loses grip of the Darksaber, which is slowly sliding towards the edge of the platform. Moff Gideon stands on Mando's chest and begins to push down, and says something along the lines of, "Now you die, Mandalorian." And here Bo-Katan is confronted with a choice. Does she go for the Darksaber and claim everything she ever wanted, becoming the ruler of Mandalore? Or does she let it fall and save Mando? Now I want to expand on this choice a bit. We know what the Darksaber represents. It's far more than just a weapon. It represents Mandalore and the power to rule Mandalore. So, effectively, Bo-Katan is presented with a choice. Does she choose the Darksaber, choose the power that she's been searching for her entire life? Or does she choose Mando, a man without Mandalorian blood, yet a man that is so devoted to her people and cause? A man that represents the rebuilding of Mandalore and the future. Here you can see that there's a meaningful conflict flowing through the entire season. And it's not the conflict between Moff Gideon and the good guys. It's the conflict between Bo-Katan and Mando, or more accurately, an internal conflict for Bo-Katan herself that is resolved in the end, where she has to make a choice for the future of her people in Mando or the past of her people in the Darksaber. Ultimately, in this story, Bo-Katan will choose Mando, and she'll kill Moff Gideon, letting the Darksaber fall off the cliff and losing it forever. Anyway, I know this was probably a longish video, but I really hope that you enjoyed it, and if you could please like and subscribe, it would be really... But what about this? A closing scene? Now, there is one final scene that I would add to the very end of the story, and it follows one of Gideon's clones who manages to escape the Battle of Mandalore. The clone is injured and escapes in a tiny ship with only a few men. He makes it to orbit and is about to jump into hyperdrive when one of his men looks at him. "Sir, the ship isn't moving," he says. "What do you mean it isn't moving?" Gideon snarls, taking control of the controls. But the soldier is right. The ship is stuck. Gideon's face pales. He knows what this is. He knows who this is. "Sir, what's wrong?" one of the stormtroopers asks. Gideon, for the first time in his life, doesn't have a comeback. He doesn't have anything to say. All he can do is stare as his ship is pulled from its current course, moving closer and closer to a great mass that sits above them that he cannot see. A clunk echoes through the cabin as they stop moving, and the main door of his ship grinds open slowly, billowing a thick, white smoke. The door clangs to the ground, and for a second, nothing happens. Gideon's men raise their blasters to the door, when blaster fire pours in, ripping his men to shreds, leaving Gideon alone. And that's when a group of death troopers barge into the room, running at Gideon to restrain him. He uses the force to pick up one and throw it against another, but a blaster bolt cuts through the smoke and hits his hand, causing him to fall, wailing in agony. The death troopers make it to him and pin him to the ground, tying his hands behind his back. And then, through the smoke, walks the man Gideon is dreading. "Failure," the man says, "is not something I tolerate." Gideon looks at him, his face pale. "A mere setback. We can still fix this. We can still replicate cloning. I just need more time." The man shakes his head. "No, you've had enough time. It had become clear to me that you are no longer useful." The man raises a blaster. "Thank you for your service, Moff Gideon, and long live the Empire." Gideon's eyes go wide. "Wait, please, I can..." The man discharges a blaster bolt in his head, ending the sentence abruptly. Silence fills the cabin, the only sound the heavy breathing of death troopers. "Find me the names of the Mandalorians who did this," the man breathes, looking back over his shoulder. his blue skin bright in the ship's LED lights. Find me the Mandalorians, and I will show them the mercy of Grand Admiral Thrawn. Anyway, hope you liked the video. Please like and subscribe. This is my first attempt at a YouTube video. If you think the story was good, if you have any feedback, please put it in the comments. If you think I did a good job, say it. If you think I did a bad job, say I did a good job. You know how it is. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.